Hello and welcome back. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Jailed former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak is found guilty of abuse of power in the biggest 1MDB trial to date. The verdict marks a major moment in the multi-billion-dollar corruption scandal and could have significant political impact. South Korea's investigation into the Jeju air crash that killed 179 people is said to miss its one-year deadline for a progress report. Officials say families are still waiting for answers as they continue to demand clarity on what went wrong. Myanmar's military plans phased election in December and January, covering limited townships, and as the civil war goes on, the junta admits voting won't be nationwide and results timing remain unclear. India has raised alarm over rising attacks on minorities in Bangladesh, citing nearly 2,900 incidents against Hindus and others. Concerns grew after a Hindu man was killed by a mob. Bangladesh has condemned the act and made arrests. The US says it carries out a strike against Islamic State militants in northwest Nigeria at the request of the Nigerian government. President Donald Trump and the US military say the group is accused of targeting Christians in the region. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says a call with US envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff brings new ideas on formats, meetings and timing to move closer to peace. He says he passes Christmas greetings to President Donald Trump as Moscow says it is analyzing related proposals. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Zelensky also says he expects to meet Donald Trump in the near future. He says the planned meeting aims to advance discussions on ending the war. South Korea's special prosecutor asked for a 10-year prison sentence for ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol over charges linked to his failed martial law bid. Prosecutors say he tried to block arrest in January by barricading himself inside the presidential compound. Moving on, viewers, the US has thanked the Nigerian government for its support to strike the Islamic State militants in northwest Nigeria at the request of Nigeria's government, claiming the group had been targeting Christians in the region. The Christmas Day operation followed an earlier threat by President Donald Trump in a Truth Social post where he warned Nigeria to stop the killing of Christians or face US action. The US military's Africa Command says that the strike was carried out in Sokoto Strait in coordination with Nigerian authorities and killed multiple ISIS militants. Nigeria's population is split between Muslims living primarily in the north and Christians in the south, with the Nigerian government saying armed groups target both religious communities. Meanwhile, some locals have opposed the strikes by US on foreign land and called the action as unjustified. Let's listen in.
This rumor and this issue of coming of Americans has been lingering for a while now. So coming to Nigeria to do that is just to set a pace for Nigeria also that puts your leg in. We don't need to be fighting to go to Burkina Faso, go to other places and be fighting while our own house is on fire. It doesn't make any sense.
If they're intruding without permission, you're intruding by force, so you're not justified. Every country has the liberty of making their own decisions.
Moving ahead, viewers, India's Ministry of External Affairs has expressed strong concern over growing hostilities against minorities in Bangladesh, stating that nearly 2,900 incidents of hate crime against Hindus, including deaths, cannot be dismissed as political violence. The Ministry of External Affairs said Muslims and Christians have also been targeted and stressed the need for safety, justice and accountability. The statement comes amid outrage over the lynching of Hindu youth Dipu Chandra in Mymensingh. The 25-year-old government factory worker was allegedly attacked by a mob over blasphemy accusations. He was beaten to death and his body was later set on fire and dumped along a highway. Bangladesh's interim government has condemned the killing and confirmed 7 arrests. The incident took place during fresh unrest linked to protest following an assassination attempt on student leader Sharif Usman Hadi. intensifying concerns over minority security in the country. Joining me now in this discussion is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, who is a former diplomat, and he joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sachdev, for joining me in this discussion. Ambassador, this is of course a situation that's been continuing since the last year, since October 5 when Hasina was ousted. Since then, the attacks on Hindus have not curbed, the attacks on Christian minorities have not been curbed. What really is the Muhammad Yunus government doing? Seems like only a puppet regime by the Jamaatis.
Thank you for having me. The question that you have raised is an important one, particularly in the context of Bangladeshi unrest and instability, and our own official spokesman's reaction to the same. Bangladesh is an important neighbor, and for Bangladesh, 94% of its land border lies with India. So India's reactions are important. At the same time, Bangladesh is under decompression after elections have been announced for February 12, leading to a surge in political activity. And for a certain class of politicians or budding politicians, wannabe politicians, their credentials lie along two pathways. Firstly, to showcase that they are Islamic fundamentalists. Secondly, to be in competitive anti-India trail. Both of these are out of context for Bangladesh and are not in the national interest. Yet, for the short term, Bangladeshi politicians, some of them seem to be succumbing to these two temptations, and that has led to a certain amount of vitiation of atmospherics, and these two pathways join together when it comes to vendetta and conspiracy theories against Hindu minorities, about which our official spokesman has made a detailed expose. I think acting chief executives, chief advisors, government seem to have fallen apart, and the advisor Home Affairs has resigned last week, admitting that he has not been able to contain the deterioration in law and order and internal security. So it stands to reason that between now and February 12, the atmosphere is likely to remain tense, and sporadic violence and invectives about Islamism and anti-India sentiments would continue to be rant the air for some time to come. Let's hope that the government formed after February 12 elections would be stable and would be able to come to the grips of the situation and put an end to this kind of anti-national, anti-societal behavior, because secularism is ingrained to Bangladeshi psyche and culture, and India is an important neighbor, not only because it occupies 94% of the common border, but also because there are very important economic, social, and security-related paradigms shared by the two countries. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador Sachdev, another question, if I can ask you, how do you think the upcoming elections will change the polity of the nation? Will there be any real change that can be expected, especially after we saw Tariq Rahman was back? We know how the BNP has had good association with the Jamaatis, and for all we know, the Awami League may not even contest the polls. The NCP leader student was killed. What real change can be expected after this election?
This is a good question, and I think the answer lies in hope. Stability and internal security in Bangladesh is in everybody's interest, including that of India. Nobody likes neighborhood to be in turmoil with gangs setting against minorities, etc., etc. So it is to be hoped that the current state of affairs is a temporary phase, but we can only hope at this stage that these elections would be decisive. In a way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the atmospherics continue to be bad, and the voters in Bangladesh would be revulsed by this deterioration in socio-economic conditions and politics of vendetta and extremism. So they would hopefully vote for those candidates which can ensure stability to the country and revive the economy, which has fallen apart since Sheikh Hasina's departure on August 5, 2024.
All right, sure. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Sachdev, for joining me in this discussion and weighing in with your opinion. Moving ahead, viewers, now, Taipei has conducted a security drill following last week's fatal stabbing attack in the city center that killed 3 people. The exercise ahead of the city's New Year's Eve fireworks celebration simulated 3 scenarios, including a Molotov cocktail attack in a subway station and an indiscriminate armed attack at a bus transit center and a local shopping mall. 27-year-old Chang Wen let off smoke bombs at Taipei's main train station last Friday, then made his way to a mall at a nearby subway station, attacking people both inside the shopping center and on his way there. Chang died falling from a building during a police chase later. Taipei Mayor Chiang Wan-an, in an address in front of a group of firefighters and drill participants, said the drill was one of 3 planned before the Lunar New Year festive season in February.
我们要确保所有市民的安全。透过今天的高强度演练，我们要来彻底全面检视现行的防御机制，我们不遗漏任何一个环节。
All right, now joining me in this discussion is Ross Feingold, but before he joins us, let's give you some more details. Viewers, Chuang, who's a Taipei resident and teacher who observed part of the drill, said the simulation was well executed and met the citizens' expectations. He added the December 19 attack had heightened security concerns, but Friday's drill assured him that the authorities were taking public safety seriously. Let's once again listen into Chuang and other residents.
我刚刚看到这市政府演练呢、是非常完整性的，而且呢，它还搭配了这个百货公司的演练。那我觉得这个一切呢，都符合市民的要求。 因为在未来啊，如果在发生这样的事情的时候呢，他们才会有一定的一个状况的因应，那对市民也是一种保障的安全的措施。
台湾，尤其是台北，一直都是还蛮安全的一个状态。那我觉得也是要有一些，像我们很常以前有地震演习啊，或是各式各样的演习，那我觉得是蛮必要的。就是至少说，如果真的有状况的话，要怎么去应。
不管是这类型的演习，或者是 不管战争或者是一般的危险的恐怖攻击的，我觉得这样练习都有必要。那就是 如果真的事情有发生的时候，我们至少有一些应对的措施，可以去把伤害降到最低吧。
Let's now welcome Ross Feingold, political analyst from Taipei, to join us in the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Feingold, once again for joining me in this discussion. Now, this is a very welcome step that's been taken by the authorities in Taiwan, conducting these security drills. Would you say it's going to set a very good precedent?
Just to clarify, these drills today were actually undertaken by the local authorities, not the national authorities, but the local authorities are on the front line for security of the public within the municipality. The training is important, and having this kind of close to real-world situation simulation is certainly helpful, but there's always going to be a concern that when an actual event transpires, how will the authorities react, and will they be able to implement their training? And that's just an unknown. Fortunately, Taipei doesn't have, or other parts of Taiwan don't have, the same number of public safety incidents that occur in other cities around the world. It's generally considered safe. And fortunately, we don't have much of a terrorist threat here. But this is also not the first time that a deranged individual has done this kind of thing, a random attack on other pedestrians or on other passengers on transit systems. So the authorities do need to prepare constantly for these kinds of events.
Well, certainly. All right, do stay on with me, Mr. Feingold, as we move ahead. Viewers, Myanmar's military government has announced a phased plan for national elections, even as the country remains locked in civil war. Local media says voting will take place in 3 phases. The first 2 rounds are scheduled for December 28 and January 11, covering 202 townships, and third phase will follow on January 25 in 63 more areas. That leaves much of the country unable to vote. Janta leader Ming Aung Hlaing has admitted the election will not be nationwide, citing ongoing fighting since the 2021 coup. Vote counting dates have not been announced. Analysts say the military's move from the battlefield to the ballot box faces serious challenges despite claims of public support. And I now request Mr. Feingold to join us back in the discussion here. Mr. Feingold, we were talking about this election in Myanmar, I believe just a few days earlier also. Of course, there is political unrest, but how do you see the decision of holding elections in a phased manner? Do you think it will ensure elections to be held in a safe, secure manner as one would expect?
Probably, in addition to security concerns and the tenuous hold that the military has on large parts of the country, even the parts where they think they can hold the voting, I think another factor here is that they want to give themselves some breathing room. If there is a security situation, for example, if there is a disruption to the voting by one of the armed groups that oppose the military, that might give the military time to say, we're going to have to put a pause on this, and their excuse would be instability. That would actually work in their favor. They could say we're not ready to have an election or a transition in government. So it's kind of like they're building in a hedge for themselves as well. I think another factor here is also, and we've seen this in the last few hours, keeping in mind this is a developing story as they proceed to and begin the actual vote. I think with the enormous, and there is an enormous amount of international attention that is now being focused on Myanmar, an amount of attention that the country has not received despite the ongoing war in recent months or recent years, as there's been focus on other conflicts around the world, such as in Ukraine and in Gaza. I think the generals are concerned about the international reporting. They're concerned about how foreign governments are looking at this. And again, having the phased election gives them time to adjust. And frankly, there's going to be a lot of criticism. And they're realizing that now, because almost all the reporting is saying that the election's a sham. So I think also by having the phases, it allows them to react to the international coverage and inevitable criticism.
Right. Talking about other foreign governments, like you were saying, how do you view the decision of ASEAN states to not send in an observer?
They probably struggled with how to respond, but ultimately decided that they couldn't endorse this election, given the parameters and the limited ability for previous political parties, most notably the party that made up the previous government, to participate, and also the fact that large parts of the country will not be participating in the vote because of the ongoing civil war. So it's disenfranchising many citizens. So I think ASEAN struggled with this, but ultimately decided that they cannot be seen as endorsing this process.
And what's your opinion once again on the fact that they've decided to have the biometric details of all the voters in place? That's definitely going to set a new standard of identifying all the citizens of the country.
On the one hand, when you have a regime like this, they want to be able to control as much information and about individuals or about the news as they possibly can, and using tools like this allow them to heighten the control they have over their own people. So from their perspective, of course, they love the implementation of this technology. Now, on the other hand, their defense is going to be that other countries use similar technology in all sorts of circumstances, whether that's at border control or for voting or other situations. So it works both ways. They probably love having this tool, and they're ready to defend it against the inevitable criticism.
And what's really going to save Myanmar? Trump is saying the situation has been normalized. The ASEAN doesn't want to interfere. But everybody, like you say, knows it's a sham in the name of elections. What's going to save the nation from the political unrest?
It's a great question, given how terrible the situation is, and keeping in mind how undeveloped and what a failed state Myanmar has been for most of the years since it became an independent country after World War II. But we can only go by the precedent, and the precedent was that not long ago, just 10 years ago, the military did step aside for a civilian elected government. They did build into the Constitution that they could retain some seats in the parliament, but generally they did give way. But that only lasted about 6 years until they stepped in again and overthrew the democratically elected government. So again, all we could say is that there is precedent for a group of generals to give way. If it's not this current group, maybe it's the next group that takes power after the current group retires. But that is just purely speculative, and it's not the situation at the moment.
All right, sure. Well, for now, thanks very much, Ross Feingold, for joining me in this discussion. It was nice to have you here. And moving ahead, viewers, let's also tell you some science news. Now, scientists have witnessed a never-before-seen cosmic explosion where a massive dying star split apart and then crashed back together, triggering a rare double blast in space. The event sent ripples through space-time and helped form some of the heaviest elements in the universe. Normally, these massive stars end their lives as supernovas, spreading elements like carbon and iron. Another powerful explosion, known as the kilonova, occurred when two neutron stars collided, creating heavier elements such as gold. This newly identified event, called AT 2025 ULZ, appeared to combine both phenomena. Scientists said a single object produced two separate but equally powerful explosions, something long predicted but never observed before. If confirmed, researchers said this could have been the first known super kilonova. The study's lead author called it an eye-opening discovery. That's all we have time for, but do keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.